Okay, so welcome to the Microsoft DevOps User Group meeting for July. I'm your host Jeffrey Palermo, and again we had tremendous uptick with the group, 212 members just since this past fall. And what this group is about is for all software professionals working on the Microsoft platform who want to explore, implement, and learn DevOps. This group embraces the cloud, embraces Azure, and as such, we'll bring in the best presenters for each topic while live streaming all the content. And we're going to record. We record each one. There is on the Meetup group page, there is a group to YouTube playlist where you can look at all the past content that we've had. Here in July, we have a review of just, we do have a special announcement, and we're also going to review the announcement that were made at the Microsoft Inspire conference, which is the partner conference just this past week, and upcoming meetings we have in August. If I click over here, we have someone from the DevOps evangelism team at Microsoft, Jessica Dean, who's going to be talking about Kubernetes and Helm, and so that's going to be some good content here for the August meeting. So let me, I have just a little presentation here that I put together just to help going through the announcements. Now, for the, what we dubbed leading up to this, the super secret announcement change. So this group is going to be having a name change probably over the next month. And it's going to include the word Azure in the name. So several years ago, I founded a group called Azure Austin, and it was just for Austin, Texas, which is where I am. And over time, other people got involved, and then we also made it virtual, kind of like this one. Well, that group hasn't had a meeting in a while, and I talked to the other people who are organizing it. We decided to merge the two communities and attempt to do online virtual meetups and virtual presentations and record them, but also get some in-person local things going. So this group is going to have Azure added to the name, the Microsoft Azure DevOps User Group, and so the meetup group name will change a little bit, and we'll be inviting the 500 members who would join the Azure Austin meetup group, and go from there. So the virtual aspect is going to stay the same. In addition to that, we're going to start out in Austin by having a in-person lunch gathering for the DevOps community members in Austin, Texas. And for those of you in all the other locations, if you are interested in announcing a lunch location and facilitating a lunch location in your area, let's use the meetup group and use the discussion capabilities on there, so that the where and the when can be advertised, whether it be in North Carolina or Dallas or Florida or wherever. Just say, hey, we're going to go to this restaurant. It's going to be on this day. It's going to be at this time, and get the word out. And if you get two other people that are in your same location, boom, you have a lunch, and then it grows from there. Just from past experience with these types of things, here in Austin, we've been able to get 15 and 20 people going to the same spot, and you just find a casual restaurant that has kind of more open seating, and it works really well. So if you're interested in announcing and coordinating a in-person DevOps community lunch, then please make yourself known. Send me an email, send me a note through the meetup, whatever's more convenient. All right. How are we doing with the other members? Is anyone trying to get on video and have any difficulty there?
Everyone should try again now. I think I changed a setting that might have helped people.
Okay, looks like, all right. Okay, Eric Hexter is coming on board. Eric, go ahead and turn on your video. We kind of promoted everybody. Oh, there's Bob. And there's Eric. Awesome. All right. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to PowerPoint. Let's just go through the Microsoft Inspire announcements, and let's have this be an open discussion. So just unmute your microphone, and if you have something to add or a question to ask. So one of the things that Microsoft really pushed at was the market research they've been doing, and right now all of the stats point to IT spend being at 5% of world GDP, which I think the number was $4 trillion in IT spend, which is phenomenal, and it's at a growth trend where they expect over the next 10 years for it to go from 5% of world GDP to 10% of world GDP. So that means that all of us working generally in the IT field, it's continuing to grow. It's not plateauing, it's not declining, it's continuing to grow and expected to double as a percentage of world GDP over the next 10 years. So that's kind of a huge figure. This freight train that some of us have been on for multiple decades is continuing to grow and grow faster. They shared some stats on Azure, and Azure year over year is growing at 93% growth rate from just a usage and customer usage perspective. So the cloud environment that most of us are targeting is growing at a phenomenal rate as well. They shared those stats. They made some comments on the GitHub acquisition, even though it's not brand new news. They did have several people talking about the GitHub acquisition, and it's actually not closed yet. It's not final and approved. It's expected, I believe, at the end of this year, but the contracts between the companies are there. Nat Freeman, who was the corporate vice president who was tapped to lead the ALM group at Microsoft and Visual Studio Team Services. He was also the CEO of Xamarin when Microsoft acquired Xamarin. He's been tapped to be the new CEO of GitHub whenever they do finally make the transition. So they're kind of in a state where they're not really doing much because they have to get final approval, but they've already announced that that they intend to continue operating GitHub as a separate entity and keep the open source focus. They've talked about being all in on open source and not changing that focus at all. There were some questions about some people defecting and going to GitLab because they were worried about if they were competing with Microsoft and they didn't want their code on GitHub now that Microsoft owned it. But they've shared that as a percentage of the GitHub users, it wasn't even a blip. So they really haven't had any meaningful defections since the announcement of the acquisition. They also talked about Microsoft's commitment to being an all-in participant and contributor to open source, and mentioned that Visual Studio Code is the most used editor among Node.js developers. So that was an interesting stat because VS Code was developed as an open source IDE, and it's on GitHub from the start. They talked about how GitHub has 28 million developers using it and 85 million repositories, and that Microsoft, even before the announcement, was the largest contributor of open source code hosted on GitHub. And then one interesting tidbit, they haven't published this in writing, but several people have talked about this, is that over time, GitHub will eventually become the preferred code hosting place for code. And so TFS and VSTS have had the TFBC and now the Git support, and that'll continue for a long time because backwards compatibility, you're going to have that for decades to come. But that strategically, GitHub is the place for code, and so that over time they expect to figure out how to integrate that. But again, the deal's not closed yet. So any questions or comments on the GitHub acquisition? I know there's been a lot of discussion out there, and probably some of you have some information. Nothing. All right. Another push another push and a theme they've had for a while is how they frame intelligent cloud and intelligent edge. So obviously the cloud is Azure, and then in this intelligent edge is all of the devices, whether they be the Windows desktop, tablet, phones, even stuff that they don't own, like the iPhone. It's the kind of conceptually Azure in the middle, and all of the cloud services, including Office 365, everything that they provide as a software as a service, that's the intelligent cloud. And then the edge are all kinds of devices of any nature that are connected to the cloud. That's what they term the intelligent edge. So even IoT devices or any type of device that could connect up to a URL in some type of Azure service, that's what they're classifying as intelligent edge. There's a big push in digitization. We saw this term used probably at the turn of the year 2000. People were talking about digitization, but now it seems like it's an even bigger push. And of course, for Microsoft, Microsoft 365 is part of that central hub, not just their Dynamics products and the Office products, but now Power BI, Power Apps, and Flow are a big push for them in digitization, because it allows someone who isn't a professional programmer to write some type of thing, some type of application where data can be worked with or data can move from one place to another, and they have lots of connectors into a lot of the various SaaS products. And one of the things that I've been thinking about as I look at Power Apps and Flow and Power BI and the common data service is what the DevOps process is for those technologies, because it's not yet clear to me, one, how to version those types of applications, and then two, how to set up a progression from one environment to the other as you make significant changes. And if you have lots of people using this type of application, have your set of pre-production environments with a progression through. I think that Microsoft is probably still working on that, and it is very early. So one of the quotes, and I think that Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, in his keynote brought up this quote from Mark Weiser: "The most profound technologies are those that disappear. They weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it." And so one of the early examples of technology was literacy technology, basically the written word. There was a time in human history when information was passed. It changed from verbal passing of information to written down passing of information, and now writing is everywhere. It's on signs everywhere, and so we don't even think about it being something. It's just like, oh, this is just normal. And so when I think about in 2005, which is really when continuous integration started. That's 13 years ago. Continuous integration started coming around. It was this new thing, but now for people who've adopted it, a number of years ago, it's just an automatic thing that happens in the background. You check, you push some code, and you have this routine that just runs. And from time to time, the build breaks, and it throws off some alarms because you missed something. You forgot a file, or you boneheaded mistake, and now your build broke, and it caught you. And now the same thing with the continuous delivery pipeline. Oh, yeah, the build's working. Okay, we're packaging up software. We're deploying it from environment to environment, and it's just happening behind the scenes. I'm not really thinking about it. It just happens. And products like VSTS and Terraform and Octopus Deploy and spinning up resources automatically in Azure, you put these things in place, and the development teams are writing feature code, new screens, changes to the software, and this stuff is just happening behind it. So when done well, it is this category of technology that just disappears in the background, and it's just constantly running, and the development teams don't really have to think about it because it's just constantly running in the background. And when it fails, it caught something really early, and that's valuable, instead of something breaking and then you're not even being aware of it until the week after. But this was talked about just in the general theme of all of these digitization technologies at the partner conference. They did make some announcements about Microsoft Teams, which has been around, I guess, 9 months now, and they're offering it free now for up to 300 users, and so that was one of the announcements. Has anybody on this particular call tried Microsoft Teams yet? I guess if you're not on video, you can put it in the chat. What's that?
Yeah, we've actually started using Microsoft Teams to a certain level, at least part of our teams.
Okay. So not just piloted it, but actually adopted it.
Yeah, we use that along with Skype for Business. We have a Skype for Business server, and so it now ties in pretty well. We can communicate across Teams using Skype for Business and Teams. Okay, it's not a foolproof integration, but yeah, we like it. It's got a lot of good integrations with like with GitHub and VSTS, and has integrations into their OneNote, and stores all the files in SharePoint where you can get to them elsewhere. So yeah, it seems to work all right.
Okay. And Ravi on the chat said that they've tried Microsoft Teams. So that was the announcement, free for 300 users. They also gave some examples of integrating Office 365 and being able to work on spreadsheets right there. And it seems like they're expanding the integrated capabilities of a team channel, which is kind of interesting because we have a Teams account, and we've tried it for a few projects, but we've also been using Slack for several years, and it looks like Microsoft is really adding in the integrations and has a lot of momentum behind Teams. So it's interesting to see where it's going. This is another add-in. They're adding live events, not just video calling, but live events into team capabilities. So that's another thing they shared, as well as the pushing on the video conferencing technology. There is one current limitation that is making a lot of people pause and stick with Zoom or GoToMeeting, and that is the limitation of 4 visible video feeds at once, which seems to be a current limitation that a lot of people are calling out. That and I've just looked at some online forums, but technologies like, I think GoToMeeting has up to 16 video feeds. Zoom has up to 25 concurrent video feeds. You have the checkerboard of videos along the screen, and then Microsoft Teams has 4. So a lot of people are calling out that difference. And if enough people, I mean, there's no real technical limitation clearly, so they should be able to increase it to keep pace. I think there's a bandwidth limitation, obviously, if big players like GoToMeeting are eliminating it to 16, but I'm sure that can be accommodated. Microsoft Whiteboard is something they also announced was generally available from preview. You go to the Microsoft Store and you log in with a Microsoft account, and you just have a whiteboard. It's not particularly integrated with anything. It just stores your whiteboards, and I think it's, if you use a pen on a Microsoft Surface or Surface laptop, then I think that's what it's targeted for. And you can save and you can share and collaborate on these whiteboards with anybody in your Microsoft organization. So that was one of the announcements. I tried it out, and I invited one of my our VP of engineering to it, just to play around with it a little bit, and I think it has some bugs to work out, but this looks to be kind of the path they're going. Power Apps and Flow, I did talk about that. There was a lot of content around just incremental innovation with Power Apps and Flow, but the big items that they talked that are new, and not particularly new to last week, but is the common data service and the integration with Power BI, and then the ability for Power Apps and Flow to not only develop applications against connectors, like connecting into Salesforce or Dynamics or a spreadsheet, but actually have this database model like service that's not SQL Server, but they're calling the common data service. So this is their model It's actually on the Microsoft website about the Common Data Service. And you can imagine under the covers that it might actually be stored in SQL Server. I'm not sure if it actually is, but it's supposedly, and I haven't validated this, and speak up anybody if they have, that pro development tools can push and pull data into this common data service that has tables and relationship between tables, and Flow can push and pull data from all the various places that have integrations. Power Apps can provide screens to work on the data and enter the data and retrieve it. And then Power BI can provide data analytic type reports on the data that's pushed in here. So that's the promise. There was a lot of discussion about this, and especially when it comes to non-developer productivity users who maybe they could sling a Microsoft Excel formula like 7 ways to Sunday, and so they're really sophisticated in that regard. And maybe in the 90s, these would be the folks who would sling together something with Microsoft Access and make something really useful. I think they're targeting that same constituency in order to drive adoption of their cloud services. I think if Microsoft makes it easy to get your data into the cloud, which if you put your data here, it's in an Azure data center, then that'll drive adoption as well and integration with the other products. Has anyone tried out the Common Data Service or any of these bits? Well, like I said before, I've done a little playing around with this, but what I'm still unclear on, that's going to be really, really important to support these in a professional way, is how to set up a DevOps pipeline for these types of applications. How to have a series of pre-production environments. What does it mean to have some test cases so that I can validate that it does the right thing? And what does it mean to promote a change from one environment to the other and then label one environment production? So I think those, regardless of what the technology is, you need those concepts. Otherwise, you're just coding in production, and you're going to break people. All right. Another announcement from Jason Zander around Azure specifically was Azure Virtual WAN and Azure Firewall. So probably most of us have experience connecting into an Azure network, doing Azure a VPN. But this concept, the Azure Virtual WAN, says instead of doing the hybrid networking and connecting an Azure subscription with the on-premise network, it says we're going to create a wide area network in the Azure subscription and then attach our on-premise devices to that network. And so if we have a device in one place connected to the virtual WAN in the Azure subscription, and we have another device somewhere else connected to the virtual WAN in the Azure subscription, then those two on-premise yet distributed devices will effectively be on the same network and then could connect to each other by way of the network in the Azure subscription. So that's kind of a new paradigm that they've announced. It is in preview. It's not generally available. They announced that it's new, and so it's in preview status right now. But that's kind of an interesting concept because it takes so many organizations these days don't have all of that on-premise IT infrastructure. Like business, if a business was built in the 90s, it's got all kinds of on-premise stuff, or in the 90s or before. Businesses that have been around a long time, they have a lot of stuff built up. But there's a lot of companies that have created their infrastructure since cloud was normal, and they haven't gone with an on-premise Active Directory and on-premise this and on-premise that. And so for this, it enables the on-premise devices to be connected into the Azure network as the normal network. So that's an interesting paradigm shift, and I want to dive into it more. But they announced that, and it's in preview. All right. They also announced general availability of the managed database instances will be in Q4 of the calendar year. So by the end of 2018, we'll come out of preview and into general availability of full real SQL Server in Azure. If anybody is migrated applications to Azure that have a SQL Server database, there have been limitations on, like, if you had some legacy database to database joins through linked servers in stored procedures or whatnot, you couldn't do that in Azure because it was a constrained instance of SQL Server. The managed instances are 100% every feature of SQL Server, the latest, SQL Server 2017 and on. So regardless of how nasty and how old the SQL has been that works on it, if you have 6 databases that have cross database joins in the stored procedures and they're just one big ball of database mud, at least you could lift it and shift it into Azure with managed instances, because it is a complete full SQL Server instance where you don't have to run the operating system. Microsoft does that for you in the data center, and all it does is provide the database engine for you. So you can now, going GA in Q4, we'll be able to lift and shift any SQL Server, no matter how nasty it's gotten over the years. So that's pretty meaningful. That's pretty meaningful for my company for sure. So. All right. And all right, so that was the last big announcement from the Inspire conference. Any questions or comments on any of these items, or anything interesting that maybe I missed? Well, Hexter, what's the most interesting part to you? What are you keeping an eye on?
Hey, I had to dial in on my phone because I don't have a mic. You hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you great.
For me, really, the firewall is huge, because now I don't have to go into Azure and spin up a virtual appliances. I don't have to go buy an F5 virtual appliance or another vendor. I get something that's built in. I know it's going to be redundant. The pricing model works a little better, and I'm not kind of micromanaging VMs. So that's huge. That's huge for what I need to do. So that's probably like the most exciting thing I've heard out of Azure in a while. So that's how boring my life is. I'm excited about firewall. So
Awesome. Well, anyone else have something that stands out in particular? All right, just looking at the chat to see if anybody. Oh, we had a few who joined late that we didn't promote to panelists. Because Sean from Microsoft just joined us.
Good afternoon. I can turn on my camera if I can figure out how to turn it on. There it is. Hi. Sorry I'm late. My last meeting obviously runs long.
So we just went over the announcements at Inspire as they're related to Azure and they're related to kind of DevOps, just giving an overview. Again, we have our August meeting already on the books. Sorry, yeah, for August, and we will be scheduling for those here and who watching the recording because you couldn't make this time in Austin. We'll schedule a lunch in-person meeting in Austin. If there's anybody in any other city, if you just look through the 212 members that we have on the meetup and you see another person in your same town, then just pick a restaurant and say, hey, we're going to go here, and just coordinate and get together. And we'll try to, as this community grows, it's important that we bring in good content and learn, because the whole industry, DevOps is new. Yeah, the term was coined in 2010, but we're really figuring out how to make best use of the modern infrastructure to shorten the cycle time between making a code change and having it running well in production without accidentally shipping a problem, a bug, a defect along the way. So we want high quality pathway with speed, and we're figuring out how to take advantage of all of the technology capabilities to do that. And new things are coming out all the time, so we want to learn from each other. We want to share information. We want to bring in the best presenters so we can learn about the new things and the new products and new libraries and services that are available. But we also want to connect as a community and get to know each other on a personal basis. And so the in-person lunches are going to be one mechanism, and it's going to require more than just me, because I can't be in your locations. I'm in Austin. I happen to be in Austin, so I can do the Austin. But anybody in other cities, even if you've never done it before, just look at the list of the 212 and growing people on the meetup group, and if you see someone in your same major area, just take the initiative and reach out and say, hey, let's go here. And what we'll try to do is we'll try to have the monthly virtual meeting over video, and then the week after or 2 weeks after, somewhere in that time frame, have an in-person meeting, and then that way there's some information to discuss. We can kind of go at that cadence. Also, one of the aspects, I'd like some feedback on how to make the actual virtual elements a little more interactive. Some of the ideas have been to have a chat back channel going on using some technology, so that while the presentation is going, people can chat and comment on the material. Actually, if any of you this wasn't related to the DevOps user group at all, but last Thursday, Paul Stovall, the founder of Octopus Deploy, and myself gave a joint webinar on advanced topics with DevOps using Octopus Deploy, and we had a Slack channel going while we were presenting the answers to some questions, and there was a lot of discussion on that Slack channel. And so maybe that's a concept that we want to adopt, or I'm not sure if we want to try to have more faces on video, or if that would even fly, because even with the 10 or 11 people we have here, not everybody wants to get on video. Obviously, we can see from so anyway, what do you guys think as to, hey Riza, how we can make this a more a tighter community where we know each other while at the same time focusing on the topics and the information at hand?
I think you're doing great with what we have here. I mean, it's just a matter of time as you have more people returning. They get more comfortable and share a lot more. I mean, I don't see any drastic improvement that needs to be made.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'm always a big fan of a Slack channel or another channel that's more fluid, like we did for some of the other online conferences, just because sometimes it's good. Hey, yeah, I tried to do that, I couldn't do it, and then somebody else in the community, can relate and to them later. And that's usually, it's the equivalent of going to a conference and meeting somebody in the hallway and sharing the same problems. It might not be relevant exactly to what the speaker's talking about, so it doesn't kind of awkward about putting that kind of stuff either in the chat or the QA, because that's really dedicated towards something I want to have the speaker address. But something like that, and I think doing that also means, as kind of the core root, we also have to encourage that either by us demonstrating it. But yeah, that's definitely something I would, I would get out, because I think I usually connect more with people once they say, oh, yeah, actually, you know what, I'm doing the exact same set of technology, and I'm running into the same things as you are, and that usually helps me go further. So I kind of like to see it go there.
Okay.
Whether it be Slack or something else.
Well, then we'll give that a shot for the August meeting with Jessica Dean, and maybe I'll see about experimenting using Teams for the for the chat for the back channel in August.
It'll work.
You're shaking your head.
I'm not a huge fan of those, but
They don't have a Linux client.
No Linux. Is there a web client?
Yes, there's a web client.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And we did just turn on a public access. So we added that feature so you can invite non-O365 users as well.
Do you have to be Office 365 to create the team?
I don't know the answer to that, but
Probably
I
so.
can try it out because I have my home account and my work account.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking if there's, you just create a DevOps user group. Anyway, I'll play around with it and we'll figure out some chat channel to have ready for the August meeting. All right. Okay. Well, that was the agenda for this month. Thank you all for coming and joining. If you're watching on the recording, you can go to meetup.com and just search for the Microsoft DevOps user group, which over the next month will be I think transitioning names and having the word Azure in it as we kind of combine the Azure Austin community. So kind of look for that too, and participate on the discussion forums. Don't be bashful to start a discussion on the meetup group and either a question or a comment, and we'll continue to grow this community. And if anyone has an idea about what can make this community better, then just speak up, because that's what community is about. We're all gathered around this particular topic. We're all on this journey together. We're doing what we know to do at this moment in time, but also we're learning more about how to effectively deliver software every day, which is what this is about. So let's learn from each other, and when you figure out something, share it. And if any of you would like to, you're passionate about a topic, you figured something out, or even a show and tell of something that's pretty awesome in your own environments, let's get you on the calendar. Let's do a show and tell. It doesn't have to be a full hour. If it's only 30 minutes, that's fine. But if you have worked really hard and you got something working and it's really awesome, then let's help other people learn from it. So reach out if you have anything that you'd be willing to show, because we have some spots on the calendar. We'd like to fill up the calendar for the rest of the year. Any other parting comments from anyone?
Thank you for the presentation.
Sure thing. And one final note, since Sean is here, I would like to publicly thank him for his support of various developer communities over the years. Sean has been a consistent supporter. He works directly for Microsoft, and he's been a consistent supporter of all kinds of development user groups and community forums. So I just want to publicly thank you, Sean, for continuing to do that and helping us out.
I appreciate it, Jeffrey, and just the problem is my head gets too big, it won't fit in the screen anymore.
All right. Well, I'll try to make that a reality. All right, everyone have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.